Hi everyone, this is Pete Barusic, and I want to welcome you to this edition of the Weathered Athlete Podcast, a place for us to honor those athletes that refuse to go quietly into the night. As a weathering triathlete and a physical therapist, I will spend my time talking with those athletes that continue to make the necessary repairs and continue to move forward. They may have a few cracks in their foundation or a squeaky step, and their patinas may continue to fade, but they are no less glorious than years prior. In fact, I feel they may have more heart and resolve as they have weathered, and can provide the pathway and set the standard that we should all live by. My goal is to determine what sets these individuals apart from the rest of society. After the discussion is over, I encourage you to stick around and hear a breakdown from a physical therapist perspective of how this weathering athlete is able to keep moving forward. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your friends. Today I spend time with a local triathlete that I have to admit has a pretty impressive hat collection from all the events he has completed. I recently had the pleasure to be part of his day as he completed his first 50-miler. We spend time discussing how he has worked to navigate life and training in this COVID landscape where he went from traveling for work 4 to 5 days a week to working out of his home. He has been fortunate enough to be relatively injury-free over the years. I bet you will be able to see a few themes that he provides that I believe are part of his success and can benefit everyone, even non-triathletes. He is that friend that everyone needs to have if you are looking at taking a journey and you want some company and encouragement, which, as you will hear, can lead to some last-minute unplanned events on his part. I encourage you to hop on your favorite piece of exercise equipment or use this time for reflection as you recover from your day and find out more about my friend, your friend, everyone's friend. That is Walt Maxwell. Walt, I want to thank you for your willingness to spend a few minutes with me on the Weathered Athlete Podcast. I have to add a disclaimer before we start. I've known Walt for about 5 years now. He is one of the veterans on our tri team. He has helped pull me through a number of century rides and provided immeasurable guidance for me and a friend, Joe, as we led up to our first Ironman Chattanooga event last year. And also, as he said to me, "Who you calling weathered?" Honestly, my response is that we are all weathering one day at a time, but it's that weathering that provides the character and resilience that we use to take on the next day. So your entry here is twofold. Once you fit the age-related criteria, and second, you have a vast amount of experience and knowledge of how you have had to alter your training and racing over the years. So I welcome you, Walt.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks very much.
So since there is an age requirement of 50 plus, I need you to tell us your age, your credentials, and maybe a history about some of the athletic career you've had.
Sure. I'm 55. From the credential standpoint, I've been running since cross country in high school. And so I kind of stopped counting, but I've got about 30 or so marathons over the years, 7 full Ironman competitions, about 20 half Ironman competitions. I'll count the double down to the beach, right? The 214-mile bicycle ride to the beach. And Pete, you drug me through the last 5 miles to help me complete my first 50-mile ultramarathon just a few weeks ago. So thank you for that.
That was payback, Walt.
Yeah. I have been fortunate, when we talk about injuries and things like that, I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a couple of little spills and things like that on the bicycle. I mean, who doesn't when you're on various group rides and things like that? But the one that I had that really comes to mind was in I think it was about 28. It was a criterium race. I lost the edge. I basically wedged myself in the bike underneath a car, which you can still see the damage on my left leg, Pete.
Wow.
Right. And as well as gave me a deviated septum, right? I broke my nose and I carry that deviated septum with me to this day. And that's probably a huge mistake. And we can probably talk about that later. But,
yeah. Wow, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that because I knew you ever since I've known you. You've been pretty much you just do your thing, and I have at least you haven't admitted that you're nursing any injuries, other than just kind of maybe some fatigue and some things just from work. But
I've been really fortunate. Yeah, really very fortunate. Thank you.
That's good. As far as your work, because I know you used to travel a lot with work. So do you mind disclosing kind of what you what you did and how
Sure.
much travel you did?
Yeah. My career's been in sales and marketing and typically sales management. And I've had responsibility in North America. So I've either had teams in Canada or the US or combinations and things like that, which require me to be traveling quite a bit, typically traveling about 3 weeks out of the month, to be in front of the team with customers, corporate headquarters, and things like that. I've worked for German and Swiss companies, which also require me to go to Europe from time to time. But most recently, I'm working for a French Canadian company. So I'm typically spending about 1 week a month in Canada. This was pre-COVID, of course,
Yeah.
at corporate headquarters and various meetings and things like that. So yeah, there's quite a bit of travel. I always just, running shoes don't weigh anything. And so it's easy to pack for some running and things like that. Hotels have some level of fitness room, and what that means is that I don't travel, let's say Monday to Friday, so I'm usually home in the office one day of those weeks, and so either I can get to the gym and on one of those days and use the pool, not really swimming during the week while I'm traveling, doing some running during the week, but usually it pushes the bigger workouts to the weekends. And that's just been a cycle for a long time.
Yeah, that's why I know that, you're cycling. I think you can miss some during the week. You're such a strong cyclist. And running is running. I know the swimming has been the hardest part, I know, for you over the
Yes.
years, is finding the time to get in the pool. And so typically, so let's go pre-COVID first. So we've been running during the week. I know you're busting out a lot of miles of the bike on the weekends. How often were you typically getting in the pool during the week?
If I was lucky, maybe one day.
Okay.
One day during the week, yeah. And that took discipline, right? Because it's my least favorite, most challenging, and it just took that mindset to say, no, you have to set aside time, right, to do that.
So then with not swimming and then all of a sudden hopping in the pool and then trying to get whatever distance you need to do, and then obviously coming up to either a half distance or full, you're swimming 1.2 or 2.4 miles. How, any shoulder issues, any kind of things you had to watch just from the fact that you weren't doing much?
Yeah, there's my right shoulder a little bit. I watch a little bit closer now, especially kind of how I sleep and things like that. But no, I mean, overall, I've been very fortunate not to have, significant elbow or shoulder issues and all with the swimming. And then maybe because I'm not doing it hard enough, right? But I mean, I have one speed when I swim, and 1.5 speeds, but and they're pretty close to each other. So yeah, maybe I'm just not swimming hard enough or pushing myself hard enough. But yeah, so far so good.
So, hey, that's okay though. The goal is to get through the swim. That's all that matters in triathlon, is get through the
Yeah.
swim, get on the bike, and then get to the run and just kind of make your way to the finish. So we kind of joked before we started this, is we need to talk about the quad events that we did or that you did last year. So a little history is that I decided I was going to do Ironman Chattanooga last year to raise money for Crohn's and colitis. And I mentioned something to Walt and another friend of ours, Joe. And without hesitation, as you'll soon find out, Walt's always a yes. As he says, you had me at hello. So he's the friend that you need when you don't want to do something alone. And then Joe jumped in, and as we were raising money, we did a fundraiser at a friend's farm, and basically we ran all day long. So that person, John, was actually having an event the week before our Ironman Chattanooga. And Walt wanted to kind of pay back to John for everything he did for us, and ended up doing his event. So I'm going to give it to you at that point here. So tell me how many miles you did, and then what you did after that.
Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, so it's a 12-hour ultra marathon. It could be a relay and things like that. And so, yeah, it was a week before Ironman, probably arguably there should have been some sort of taper, and I can argue and say, yeah, I tapered right after that. But it was so we did 22 loops or 22 miles that day. That was a Saturday, if I recall. And then and so the taper began after that. And then, as you know, we traveled, I guess Thursday or so the following week for Friday and Saturday preparation. The Ironman in Chattanooga, and then raced on Sunday. Came back, so we had a recovery week or so. There was a weekend in between, and then left out again on the following Thursday. Now I think we're into the beginning of October, if I recall, at this point. And did the 70.3 Ironman in Wilmington, North Carolina, with and again, that was one of those things where, you know, there were so many athletes from the area going, and it was just as much for fun and social event, and just to celebrate a day with a lot of those other athletes as well. Came back from that another week, and actually I was traveling, and I had to I gave my car, my bike, and my gear to Matt, my coach, right, and David, who were also traveling to Florida. So they drove my car. I flew in, and so we all ended up in Panama City and raced Ironman Florida that next weekend. And I could tell you I was feeling it on the run in Wilmington, and by the time we got to Florida, it was just about finishing. You know, it was just about, hey man, let's just hang in and do this. Pretty long day, but just happy to, you know, different races are for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's the people you're with, you know, and for Chattanooga, it was about as much of that celebration of the year of being with you and Joe and the fundraising that we did, you know, and the race was really the celebration of that, you know, and then Wilmington was just the celebration of being with so many athletes from the area. And then really, Florida was kind of the fact that I could race with my coach and another, you know, David, who's just another great athlete, just to kind of be in the same space as them, and to, you know, my coaches watch my journey, and, you know, to race with him is usually pretty special for me.
Yeah, that's good. And it was funny, and I will have to throw in that when we went to Chattanooga, Walt had no intention of doing Florida. That's something that happened after that. So within basically coming back from Chattanooga, let's add that in there, Walt, that you basically came back from Chattanooga and then signed up for another one, 4 weeks later. So I give you that.
Yeah, it all happened on a text. We were texting one night, and then I don't know, call it peer pressure or whatever shamed into it, but it was just one of those, hey, you know, so-and-so's doing that. Here we go.
Yeah. So, as I said before, you had me at hello.
Yeah.
Well, I have to, you know, at age 55 to go ahead. And again, I don't care what age, even the younger, you know, in your 20s or 30s, that's a pretty big task to overcome and to get through. And so when you were done, so how'd you feel? Did you have any issues? How long did it take you to recover after that last race?
Yeah, after November, I mean, gosh, you know, it was a couple of weeks. It was Thanksgiving. And so, I kind of gave myself really kind of the rest of the month, you know, almost nothing really, just a little bit of some maintenance running and, but, you know, very little bit on the bike. And that, you know, as you know, that sort of that December is when I really started in on the upgrades in my pain cave, you know, bike and everything like that. So, so no, I gave myself weeks for that, knowing that it was just, it was a lot, and I didn't want to do anything that would create any kind of long-term, you know, issues.
Yeah, that's good. Well, then luckily for you, come February COVID or March, COVID comes in and basically everything kind of turned upside down. And so I know you have not been traveling as much. So what has that meant for you now as far as your training now in this kind of this COVID world that we're navigating?
Right. No, it's a great question. And it took me to get my head around it. I think for, you know, I traveled in the beginning of March, And then, it was getting obvious what was going on. And so, I came home and right around that same time, our corporate, our board, made a decision based on even what they were seeing in Canada, let alone the US, to kind of curb, you know, travel and things like that. And so I was actually Zooming and using Microsoft Teams with my team, probably from the third week of March on, even before it became fashionable, right? I don't know. I mean, when we use Teams as just because we're so spread out, right, in North America, so we use Teams, as a part of our business anyway. So it felt natural to do that. I can tell you, I probably spent a week or two just sort of getting used to it and not capitalizing enough, right, on that time. It was just like, wow, what do what do I do with all this? I have time in the morning, and then I have time in the evening, and and so there was a couple of weeks of that. There was a couple of weeks of some, some better training. Again, right, I had that pain cave kind of set up. We had great weather, in March and April and things like that. And so I definitely did more. Did I capitalize maybe as much as I could have to get some bigger gains? Probably not, because I did spend, we're still spending the days on, Zooming and you know how it is. I mean, you're just going from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And, you think you have all this time and you think that it's different, but it's still a day at work, right? It's still a day at the office. And so, you're starting at 7:30, you're wrapping up your last Zoom meeting at it could even be 6 o'clock or even a little bit later, depending upon what the West Coast needs and things like that. So they were still pretty long days, but yeah, it was nice to sleep in my bed. It was nice to, to kind of have weeks that, just were familiar. But in a way, I mean, without a little bit of that tightening of the schedule, without sort of that urgency, I probably let some time slip, some opportunities slip, to be honest. But COVID to me was, make lemonade, out of it. And I did make some, looking back on it, I should have made more, but I was thankful to have the break, because it really, both from the athletic side and the personal side of things like that, it really gave me a chance to pause and reflect a little bit, spend time with my kids, and things that, I mean, it wouldn't have ever happened any other way without COVID. So in some ways, I'm appreciative of that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think, we all, as the races all started getting canceled, I think for any of us that do, not just for triathletes, but for anybody that does any event, soccer leagues, for any of the 5Ks, everything getting canceled, just kind of put a funk on everybody. And it took me personally time to just kind of recover and, I think we all went through the same thing you did. Okay, what am I supposed to do at this time? And I think that we all finally got to the point. Some did great and never skipped a beat. Others of us kind of struggled and then have kind of picked up steam and said, look, we're not going to get this time back, and we need to utilize it for good. And even though we don't have an event, we don't need an event. It's about just putting in the time, and eventually we'll get it back. So good. Thanks for sharing that.
No, thanks. Yeah.
So I know you said you really haven't had many injuries, but have you had to go through any physical therapy or chiropractics or massage or yoga or Pilates or any of that stuff?
No, it's funny because, and you and I did a yoga, when was that? Was that February maybe, or something like that? Right.
Yes.
And again, that was for lots of reasons, right? It was a tri-team event. It was great to participate with a local business and things like that. But it still pointed out to me that I'm about as rigid as the Tin Man. Okay. So if there's something I want to add, right, into the mix, it's definitely going to be yoga going forward.
Yeah.
I've done some hot yoga and some things like that, and in little periods, off and on. And I always feel great afterwards, always. And it's just one of those things. It's just one of those time things. I'd love to add it in, but I don't. I'm probably not the best guy to throw the mat down and try to do it virtually at home. I need the accountability, right? To show up at a place and throw some money down and somebody correct me and yell at me and laugh at me. Yeah, no, I mean, chiropractic, not so much, years and years ago.
Yeah.
No, as I say, I've really been fortunate, Pete, nothing long-term, no physical therapy, and yeah, just fortunate in that way, right? Just like a diesel engine,
Yeah.
And maybe, maybe it's because I have limited time. I'm not pushing, I'm not trying to break a ceiling or anything like that. So, maybe it's just that balance that's just allowed me the longevity without the chronic injuries. Yeah.
Well, there's benefit to, I think you're right. You're going out there and your job is to just get it done. You're not out there pushing, you're not redlining every event you do. And I think there's advantages to that because you kind of know your limitations and you know what the purpose is. And I think that's the secret to probably some of your success is because you're really not, you can bike as hard as anybody I've ever known. But again, you're not doing that every time, all the time. So I think that's a good thing. Now, how about strength training? Have you done any strength training in the past? I know, does Matt have that built into your program?
It's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
You can always use more core, right? Always, right? And I know that it would help my swim. I mean, do I walk into a CrossFit center, right? Do I into the box? No, scares the hell out of me, to be honest. But I mean, I know that there's more that I should be doing for my core, and that has nothing to do with age, right? I just think that that's just great, and there's lots of benefits for that. And I'd also like to just do more, I guess what I would call it, managing my own body weight, right? So whether that's pull-ups and push-ups and some things like that. I like to be able to do more, get a bit more strength there. And with what we do, there's always great work to be done with squats and that sort of movement and things like that helps us build our strength, so that we get that balance of strength and then we build on the endurance and so there's benefits there. I don't do enough, and even in the past it was sort of off and on, but it's something I'd like to invest some more time into for sure.
Yeah, it's so important. I think it's something that we all tend to neglect. And even myself, as a physical therapist, I have a great weight set here in the house. I'll be the first to admit that I don't use it as much as I should. And it's just one of those things that I think the people that do it are much better later on. You can endure so much more without that kind of breakdown, which then leads to injuries. So let's see. So what are the things that, have you had to take anything into account now, at 55 that maybe you didn't even think about when you were in your 30s or 40s?
Oh, sure. I don't run every day. There's no way. If I run, it's every other day or every third day or something like that. Especially when the mileage ramps up. I recover differently from running than from biking. Maybe it's the muscle groups or whatever, but I can certainly feel the difference. And so, yeah, I feel like I could bike, 5, 6, 7 days a week and love it. Swimming again, I could probably, swim sort of every other day, but I definitely like to take a day in between, and kind of let everything settle in, with muscles and muscle groups and everything like that. But running for sure, I could run all the time, in my 20s and 30s. And yeah, no, not right now. So yeah, it's every day, it's every other day or every third day for sure, with breaks in between. And when you're building up to that marathon mileage, you're definitely listening to your body. And if it needs that second day recovery or something like that, yeah, there's no argument.
Yeah, that was think the best transition for me actually was to triathlon. I became a much better runner because of that. Because
Hmm.
every time my marathon training, I was just broken down by the time I got there. Just the mileage, I know my comfort zone, and when I start peaking in the upper 30s and low 40s, I can't do it. So by kind of scaling back and supplementing in swimming and biking, I became a much better runner, and
Hmm.
actually everything else improved. Jump to, yesterday we did a 73-mile bike ride. Started at 66 degrees, ended probably at 90. Anything special you do on kind of like those hot days as far as just your body
Um,
or nutrition?
yeah, no, great. Perfect question. And because, we've had to learn, we've had to suffer and make mistakes. And we've had to blow up over the years. And I just use the expression getting ahead of it, right? So it was about, we left out at 7, so I was up at 5:30 and I was having breakfast, right? And I was having, bananas, and I was having some carbs and things like that, just a nice balance of things. And I was already pushing some preload, from like NBS, right, to get into the system. And so, there were those stop signs and things like that. It was just about, getting the water bottles down, um, and making sure that we were eating early, throughout the day, so that by the time, and again, we had store stops, right, which were great.
Mhm.
If I had to take it all on board with me, I mean, I could have, and would have, but it was nice not to have to do that. So I did supplement with some drinks, but I bought all my food with me, and I started out with, the MBS carb hydration, and then supplemented just with some Gatorade, just for the additional volume, right, of sweat and everything like that, for the course of the day. So I alternated that a little bit, through the course of the ride. But to me, hot days like that is about getting ahead and staying ahead, because it's so hard to come from behind when you're crashing. We even had the discussion of salt out there, right? I had salt with me. And that's also something that I've added into the mix over the years, right?
Mhm.
I know when I feel it, in my head. I know when my mind's starting to wander and things like that. It's typically like a salt, deficiency or something like that, and something like a base salt, will kind of bring me back and keep me balanced. Yeah.
Okay. So this along the same lines, and let's think about, Ironman Chattanooga. We went into that and temps were upper 90s, and, you're not allowed to stop at stores there. You're basically carrying your nutrition with you. And I will say that what you just said was the best advice to me going into it, because there were people, as you know, on the side of the road throughout that whole event, and that they pushed it. It was amazing to see, that what heat, if you can manage it, it's just another day out there. But if you get behind, you're not catching up.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I've watched other athletes in past years and even this year, get to the run and then just crash, right? Have nothing left, right? Because they push, push, push. Um, yeah, we talked about just finishing. And in that heat, I was the two of the hottest Ironmans on record are both Chattanooga 16 and 19. And then I think there's like Ironman Frankfurt are the hottest in record. And so like two of the hottest in 4 years, right, have been those races. So I learned from 16, just to hit every rest stop, to take advantage of what was offered, and things like that. Even if it meant stacking up the time, it's the trade-off. Do you want to finish or not? And like you say, it was really hard to watch our fellow athletes out there pulled up under a tree, sitting down, done for the day, miles and miles from T2. Probably not, even trying to figure out how they're going to get back. And never wanted to put myself in that position, to where we were pushing it like that. And so, yeah, having the example of 2016 in my head really helped me cope with 2019 for sure.
Okay. I'm going to ask this question. So have you ever not finished a race?
No. Yeah, there's that question later on about attitude, right? It is
Yeah.
about, I'm not, I have three brothers, okay, and I was the first one in my family to do athletics, but it was it was a family that really focused on school, right, grades and things like that, and I was kind of I was the third son, right, so I kind of broke some of the, um, some of those, I don't know what you want to call them, but anyway, the rules, I guess. But so I didn't have like that really competitive parents. I really didn't have that really sort of competitive side to push, right? And so when I watch natural athletes, right, when I watch people who have a very, very different sets of discipline and how they approach their race, I mean, you and I know, Pete. I mean, there's people that we train with. They will break their legs off, right, to do it, And so I substitute a little bit of that with, do it and just don't give up.
Yeah.
You're there, and don't give up. And so I might not be the fastest. I'm not going to be the fastest guy out there for sure, but I'm not going to be the one, finding, I'm going to fight those voices in my head, that say,
Well, that's good. So are you willing to discuss your Alaska Man?
Yes. Alaska Man, right? I didn't quit. Yeah, no,
You did not.
I was yanked out of the water, right? So, and just very, very briefly, Alaska Man is a point-to-point extreme triathlon. It is unsupported, other than they give you a starting line and a finish line. And but it really pointed out my greatest weakness, right, which is my swim. And don't get me wrong, everybody swam the same water, right? And the water was 50 degrees, plus or minus a degree or two. And there's even a spot where a waterfall feeds in at about 40 degrees. And that just hits you like pins and needles. But the difference between the athletes that got out of the water, right, and myself, were the fact that they're better swimmers, so that they were there shorter period of time, right? The longer I was there, the slower I got, the more sluggish I got. I could see the finish buoy, but I got yanked out of the water under protest, thrown into a boat, and that ended my day. And yeah, it took some time, right, for me to kind of get my head around that and deal with that, because I was really looking forward to the bike. And the run was really a challenge, but we also, as in the extreme, you have a partner for the second half of the running, and so I had my brother there, and my nephew there, and so I had great support, everything like that. We traveled, we spent a ton of money for this thing, and to not finish, right, to not really kind of get deeper into the race, that was a bit of a mental setback, but it was also kind of a wake up to say, that was a stretch. That was really a stretch for me.
Yeah, but you turned it into something good, though. Didn't you go and do part of the bike, and then you ended up running some of that with your part of your family?
Absolutely. Yep. So my nephew and I did we the run portion, right, which has two huge climbs, like 6,000 foot climbs, so we tried to turn it around and make the best of the time, that we were there together.
Yeah, that's good. Because part of the reason I brought it up is that, the different, you think we talked about the heat just recently, yesterday in Chattanooga, and then obviously that was extreme cold, and it's a challenge. Again, you can't treat them the same. You take that event and move it somewhere else, it's a completely different event, and it's just a different thing you have to wrap your mind around. And you're right. I think as the struggling on the swim, that is not the place you want to struggle when it's cold.
Yeah. No, and it's one of those things, should I have found a way to train in that we talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. Hey, the water's going to be cold, but
Mm-hmm.
did I train in that? Was I swimming maybe in March or April in some of the local lakes or something like that to get that experience? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
And that's on me, right? That's
Yeah.
totally on me.
Well, you're also in North Carolina, other than,
It's awesome.
and you're not going to find that. But, you do travel to Canada, but at the time, you have to work. So it's not like you can just say, hey, I'm going to go swim in this lake. What do you think the 3 reasons for your success to getting through the training and making it to any finish line?
I like the question because it gives me an opportunity to really pay tribute to where it's at. Ironman and longer training, the training commitment, and things like that. It's really a family decision. There's a lot of people making a lot of sacrifices for time and things that don't get done around the house and time off. And so without the support of family, number one, it would be impossible. Number 2, friends. And when I say friends, I put them into sort of 2 buckets, right? There's neighbors and friends and coworkers and things like that. And they're the people that you tell about the races because they're the ones who asks. They ask and they know that you do crazy stuff. So they're like, well, what are you doing next? But you tell them about it because I believe that there's psychologically some level of accountability to that, right? And so just having them ask means, yeah, man, I'm in my training. I'm in, here's where I'm at and we're getting ready and the date's out here. And so it kind of helps mentally. And then really there's another component in there. When we say friends, we've got to try community around us. And they're beyond friends, right? They're that next level of friends who do what we do, who understand what we do. And it's very easy to, it's kind of what got me back on Facebook and everything like that, just to look at different training opportunities and bricks and I'm doing this and you can join me. And so it's beyond the social aspect too. It's the fact that we can lean on each other as athletes and train with each other. And for those of us who are sort of throwing into the same event in many cases, something like Wilmington, for example, we're all training for a similar distance and things like that. So, and Pete, when we were training, we made it a goal to do 6 centuries or something like that, leading up to race day. And so, friends that get it and friends that can help you, especially if they know what your goals are and what their goals are, is very, very helpful. And then finally, I've had a coach for about the past 7 years. Mm-hmm. And that's paying a friend. No, no, but it's a smart friend. No, but it's I've enjoyed a friendship beyond everything. And like I said, we've even raced together and things like that. But without that additional coaching, without really the method behind it and the discipline behind it and the approach, it was a couple of years before my first full. And that was really deliberate, just to build up because, as I could run, I could bike. I could not even get across the pool when we started this. And learning to swim in your mid-40s is, humbling.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it was, I had the dream. I hung onto the dream for 20 years or more before I really did anything about it. And having a coach that said, okay, is this what you want to do? All right, we'll get you there. And, never said no. And, even on the bad days, never said no. So having that kind of support, very, very critical. Yeah. Family, friends, coaching, 1, 2, 3. And like I said, we're blessed to be in an area with a lot of athletes. So having, so whether it's the training group or the club, something like that, there's just somebody who's doing something on any given day that you can latch onto and train with. You're not alone. You can be alone, as much as you want, but when you really don't want to be, there's always somebody to swim with, bike with, run with, and or and even to do yoga with and things like that now. So there's those are all critical elements. Yeah.
Excellent. That's good. Pre-race, let's say going into whether it's Chattanooga or Florida, what goes through your mind that morning? What are you thinking prior to the event? What are the things that you need to make sure that you're doing to kind of prepare yourself, one, physically and mentally for the task in front of you?
Right. The swim for me is the variable. As the swim goes, that's how the day will go. Too much energy in the swim means less for the bike and less for the run. It's just like a battery. And so I'm always a little bit concerned, nervous. It's enough to say, yeah, we've done this, but it's never quite the same. It all depends how you start, how you're pacing, what sort of interruptions do you get, during the swim and things like that. And so I'm usually focused in the morning on a couple of things. Trying to get myself calm and ready for the swim. Trying to clear my head about, and I think we talked about it earlier, about there's one thing to do that day, right? It's to put the toe in the water, and then it's to cross, to have that toe cross the finish line. And so it's to clear your head to say, this is it today, right? There is picture yourself, right? And so there's a lot of, I used to do this even in cross country in high school, just that self, you're watching yourself do it, you're watching yourself in the water with good strokes and good breathing, and you're watching yourself just patiently on the bike, kind of visualizing, just good form and just, good, nice, easy cadence and things like that. And then the same thing on the run, you're running and you're trying to keep your heart rate down, and, you're kind of at this nice pace and everything like that you can maintain. And so there's a lot of visualization for me that takes place, because yes, some of the experience is there, but there's always, for me, and people say, well, why do you keep doing it? And it's because there's always better, for me, there's always a better race, a better, higher quality race, for me out there. I've hacked through enough,
Yeah.
be it, and lots of excuses, right? A bike crash, or GI issues, or just extreme heat and things like that. I have really yet to have this one great race that I could really sort of pin it on and say, this is the culmination of everything, and so I'm still sort of looking for that.
Okay.
It's not to say that I'm dissatisfied, but there's, being a bit critical, I think, is okay. Of, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, and et cetera, et cetera. Looking for that good race.
Well, that keeps us coming back for more. There's always, we can always do better. So
Right.
in that regard, so where do you see yourself now in 20 years? Do you see yourself continuing to do this at 75?
I would love to. Honestly, I enjoy it. I've got one or two friends that are older, and as the older you get, that if you hang in there, you can make it to the show. You might just luck out one day, one race, and be in the right age group, and grab a Kona slots, and that would be the ultimate, right? Of course, but there's, I wouldn't want to set aside the friendships, the camaraderie, the network, this. I wouldn't want to step out of this community that we've built. We've literally built it together, and it works so well, and it's really a complementary part of my life, both socially and for the training and everything like that, and so yeah, I would love to see myself get there and continue to do something at that, into the 70s. Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be great. So then leading into that, what does injury prevention mean to you right now at age 55 that to get you to be 75 to do this?
Right. And whether we touched on it about listening to your body, I am one now to listen to my body, and I try not to listen to the voice that necessarily says stop. I do listen to the voice a little bit that says slow down. But it should be beyond that. There should be some more science now. I am the worst at stretching. I am the worst at just getting on the bike and going, and just, starting out with, my warm up for a run is 100 yards or something like that. And I'm the worst at that. And for me, it's going to be a newer discipline. And it's going to be, let's not run 3 miles on Tuesday and then 15 miles on Thursday. That's asking for something too. So let's be a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more disciplined about some of the training, and a bit more realistic about the goals. And when I say realistic, it's just taking the goal and then backing into the training with a little bit more theory behind it, instead of just like zero to half marathon in 2 weeks or something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it's going to include yoga. It's going to include stretching. It's, going to make some time for some of the other stuff too, to really make sure that the muscles are there, and nutrition. And I'm turning more and more towards plant-based nutrition. And so I'm putting a lot of those things in place for hopefully longevity. Like I say, being able to do this at 75, it's going to take some changes for sure. Right? I'm not the natural athlete, that is engineered, genetically engineered so well. I have to work at it. And so it's been a while, and it's been working with people like you, Pete, as a PT, to kind of listen and understand that, let's take some steps now for the future. And then it should be there, right?
Yeah. So do you have any special mantras or quotes that get you through?
The mantra for me, again, is, you're here that day to do that event, especially when it comes to, long course Ironman or half Ironman. That's your day. And as much as you may have something the day before or the day after, it's about clearing your head for that day to say, I'm going to get on the start line. I want to visualize myself crossing the finish line. What do I have to do? And to focus on, trying to be in the moment and things like that, and just focus and clear everything out. So I don't necessarily have any sort of sentences that I repeat to myself, right? Mm-hmm. Other than, now it's sort of like, okay, you've done this, right? You've been there. You've overcome this, you've overcome that, right? So that experience helps. But it's usually just about clearing the day, clearing your head for that day to say, here you are, right? You have one thing to do today, and it's get to the finish line. And that's usually what guides me through.
Hey, that works. It's honestly, you're right. It's a long day, and it's a matter of, okay, what can I do? So, visually that finish line is huge. So there is definitely nothing wrong with that. Okay. In closing, if you were to finish this sentence, my miles are 4, what 1 or 2 words would you use?
I don't want to steal, right, from Team Endure, but it's, I'm blessed. Here we are having a conversation about Ironmans and bike rides and Alaska and things that, I never thought, even in my 20s, I had dreams, but so I've been fortunate enough to find the right people and resources and things like that for the support to get me here. And so, I like the Team Endure where, we're running for those who can't, but at the same time, I want to run, I want to compete for those people who helped me get here, as a way to say thank you. Right. That's
good. Hey, Walt, I cannot thank you enough for taking this time to kind of chat with me. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I look forward to, next week when we do something else crazy again, huh?
That's it. I agree. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were able to get some insight into how one weathering athlete uses his experience to approach each day of training and racing to stay as injury-free as possible. What some may view as good luck, I view as knowing your strengths and weaknesses, the purpose of your situation, and consistency. Plus, I can't forget that he ran his last marathon in a kilt, so I think good Scottish genes may help as well. As a physical therapist, I feel his biggest attribute is his consistency and knowing the vehicle he is driving. I can promise you he will be there at the end of the race no matter how long it takes, and he has the ability to redline it when needed to keep up with any of those Ferraris, especially when cycling, but as he so eloquently states, on any given race, you are there for one purpose. So throughout the race, he will do whatever needs to be done to finish the day and cross the finish line no matter what. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Please don't forget to hit subscribe to this podcast, leave me a comment, or drop me a line if you feel you have what it takes to enter the Weathered Athlete podcast. Lastly, no matter how you complete your miles, use the following hashtag, MyMiles, capital R, number 4, as a way to reinforce the purpose of those miles. Stay safe. Hashtag MyMiles are for the journey. Pete Barusik.